Welcome back to Bio News Network. We're actually presenting here a perfect English grammar series. We're now in volume 3, and this is chapter 1, and we are going to be working on 12 new words to help you expand your vocabulary. And as always, if you're new to this channel, please by all means smash that notification bell, smash that subscribe button. We actually do live streaming of these perfect English grammar series videos very frequently, mostly daily. And we try to cover 12 new words so we can expand our vocabulary every single day. And we actually use them in sentences. We also use different recall word cloud storage memory techniques to help store away those words so that we can recall them whenever we want to. So let's take a look at some of the words we're taking a closer look at today. We're looking at Abdigate, we're looking at Acid, and we're actually looking at Aggrandize, Assuage, Confound, Fallacious, Maverick, Honoris, Paucity, Henry, Quiescent, as well as Strut. So as you can see, we're looking at 12 new words that we haven't actually used before, and we're going to take a closer look and see how we can actually use them in sentences. We want to go back real quick to focusing on the memory vocabulary recall cheat sheet that we had mentioned before. We went ahead and filled out the in our previous chapter, last chapter, volume 2, chapter 10. We looked at some of the keywords for volume 2, chapter 7. As you can see, volume 2, chapter 8 has been filled in, but we left volume 2, chapter 9 blank just for you so that you can actually take the lead and actually fill them in. It's better if you actually read the sample sentence and assign 2 keywords yourself so that you can actually recall. What we've actually found is that we're actually seeing that increased memory of the actual rectangle with a word inserted in the center as a main word with 2 cues. And once you actually remember those cue words, then the sentence, the story of the word and how it was used in context actually comes back. So we see austere, just to give an example. In that sample sentence, IMF and investment, we can quickly recall the sample sentence and recall that that had to do with IMF restrictions as far as minimizing investment risk using guidelines of the IMF for nations that receive IMF money, International Monetary Fund. Another one would be, let's see, dictum, Aurelius, Marcus Aurelius, philosopher, was very, very famous for many of the phrases, as well as um, taking an approach of sociology as far as approaching modern day problems with respect to how human beings interact with each other and our place in the world. And we take a look at the sample sentence. We see 2 keywords: Aurelius, Marcus Aurelius, as well as the word comfort, and that goes back to recalling the sentence where we actually see many of the phrases bringing comfort to many of Marcus Aurelius's followers who currently read many of his meditations. Fastidious, we can actually see that that's a recalling from our memory there. If we take a closer look at the actual sentence, that goes back to the chef actually paying very, very close attention to spices that were used to marinate the meat, and that would help you to recall the actual vocabulary of the word. So we're going to come back to this recall sheet later, take a look at some of the words that we actually went over before. If you remember puissance, it had to do with the Great Resignation and corporate America and the power structure. Many people saying goodbye to the corporate structure of the power structure of corporate America, and that has to do with puissance, which means power. So let's go ahead and take a look at the words that we're working on for this volume 3, chapter 1. and we've covered hundreds of words so far. So with each release chapter, we put the links in the video description if you need to go back and recall, take a look at some of the previous sample sentences, brush up on your recall of the words, and those links are there in the video description. So we have abdicate, which is relinquish. Let's see how it's actually used in a sentence. Abdicate, synonym relinquish, and we see there the image of a king cobra, and you'll actually see why we use that as a picture to word association. Sample sentence: the question on the minds of most citizens of the UK is whether or not the Queen is ready to abdicate the throne. Verb meaning give up the throne. So that means abdicate. So that's why we actually used the image of a king cobra, so that you'd actually remember making a word association between abdicate and the hood of the king cobra, which is synonymous with the hood or of your hair on top of your head. So once you make the association of abdicate to the king cobra hood, that has to do with giving up the throne. So we see there another one called accede, which means synonym give consent or agree, and we see the thumbs up there. So let's see how it's actually used in a sentence. Accede, millions of people around the world are eagerly anticipating the glorious day when Prince Charles accedes to the throne and strengthens the monarchy as the new King of England. Verb meaning give consent, or it could mean assume office. So in this case, it's assume office, or assume, in this case, assume the throne. And so that is accede. So just to give you an idea, as far as when you're actually filling in your vocabulary recall cheat sheet, you can look for two keywords when you start working. You can actually, if we were to go to advocate, then we would probably look at one keyword being the queen, and the second keyword will be the throne. For accede, keyword, first keyword would be prince, and and then the second keyword would be king. So you can make the association between the prince becoming a king, which would mean to assume office. So there you have it. Those are actually the way that you would want to structure your vocabulary recall sheet as far as keywords. And once you start filling in your keywords and studying them, then your brain is going to recall the word as it's bolded in the small rectangular box, and then the keywords below, and that will trigger you remembering the sentence. Then it will trigger the meaning, a synonym most likely, and other cues such as even the color of the cloud that it was in, or even possibly if you did a really good job memorizing where it was assigned in the body storage bins, whether it would be on a mouth or shoulder or an arm. So it all triggers back, remembering the story of the word. It actually triggers back to the word, to the meaning. Let's look at the next word on the list, which is aggrandize. And I want to make sure that we're pronouncing that correctly. Aggrandize, and that is verb make better or exaggerate. We see the greater sign, which is a symbol for anything greater, make greater. Let's see how it's actually used. And aggrandize. The associate director of HBR Brands has a habit of aggrandizing her role, almost to the point of demonstrating her worthiness of becoming the CEO. And that is to make greater, verb meaning make greater. So there we have the blue group, HEM group, hair, air, and mouth group. If you recall from previous chapters, we actually have 1 through 12 storage bins assigned to the human body to increase your recall memory. It's called our word cloud storage system. And basically we use color coding to help you recall the word, along with making associations when appropriate to a shoulder storage bin. So as you can see, Abdigate worked out really well because the hood of the king cobra is often associated with the top of the head, and in this case it gives up the throne. So that is a perfect way for you to remember here to abdicate, relinquish, king cobra, give up the throne. And once you see that word abdicate, it should help you to recall the picture first, and then everything else should fall into place. So let's look to the orange group, which is SSE, shoulder, stomach, elbow group, and we see assuage, and that means assuage, and that is pacify. And we have a pacifier there to relieve. So let's see how it's actually used in a sentence. Even though the level of fraud escalated at the bank, the managers continued to open more fake accounts to assuage senior managers with speculative growth, meaning they were basically covering up the fact that there was so much negativity with speculative positivity. So it was just making things actually bad to worse. But in any case, in this case, assuage means verb, meaning to relieve. And we see here that it's attached to there's a synonym, pacify, and we have the pacifier. The next word we're looking at is confound, and as it sounds, it means to frustrate or to confuse. When it's used in a sentence, confound, the airport manager was confounded by the faulty design of the new drainage system that inexplicably caused water to collect under the runway and compromise its foundation. So that's a serious situation. So we see here that was confound, frustrate, or confuse. And then to round out our orange group, orange cloud group, fallacious, we see there as fortunate or pleasant. We're using the image of a fortune teller with a crystal ball so that you can make the association of the hands or the elbow to fallacious, so that you can actually remember that it has to do with being fortunate in some case. So if we see the graduation ceremony is of a fallacious occasion, adjective meaning pleasant. And then our next set of words that we're actually looking at would be Maverick in a red group, Honoris and Paucity. And Paucity, and we see there that Maverick is a rebel. We do have a sketch of James Dean, famous actor, and noun meaning individualist. Let's see how it's actually used in a sentence here. And we can actually see here that Maverick, sample sentence in the movie The Officer and the Gentleman, the main character was admired by his fans for being a maverick who believed that military service was a very honorable path for his life. Noun meaning individualist. So there's a usage of the word maverick or rebel. And if you recall from movies such as Top Gun, Maverick was a key character in the movie. So of course, its synonym is rebel, individualist, someone who basically stands out. And then we have Honoris, which is that you can see the picture of someone carrying a big boulder on top of his shoulders, and that implies a burden or very oppressive situation. So Honoris, the two police officers showed up at the family's home with the onerous task of trying to explain how their son died. So anything representing a burden or oppressive is an adjective. So onerous task, and so we actually see there how it's actually used. Let's see if we can make sure some more associations. Burdensome, it is attached to the risk storage bin. So a lot of times when you're actually lifting, a lot of your risk takes a lot of the burden. So that is one way of remembering onerous, and it is in the your risk storage bin. So risk, if we were to make the association between risk, onerous, and then the picture of the guy with a boulder on full weight on his shoulders. being supported by his arms and his wrists, burdensome, very oppressive. And then we have paucity. Paucity, we had a small number of marbles to make the association to paucity. Let's see how it's actually used. Paucity. Consumers are going to be shocked by the prices of goods this holiday season, especially the prices of popular toys. Noun meaning small quantity. Small quantity. So paucity, and we see synonym scarcity with a few marbles. Usually, when you see marbles, they're in like hundreds of marbles in a container. But in this case, you only see 3 marbles, and they're associated with the hand storage bin. And that should be another trigger as far as memory recall, because you can only carry so many number of marbles in your hand, which implies scarcity simply because your hands can only carry a small quantity. So that worked out really well as far as being assigned to the hand storage group, and you can actually see the marbles there. So paucity to the marbles to scarcity is a good memory track for you to remember for our cloud storage. So let's look at our gray clouds here, and we see penury, extreme poverty. This is the KAF group, knee, ankle, foot. And let's see how it's actually used. Penury, I want to make sure we're pronouncing it right. An alarming number of Americans are sinking into penury. Their situation is exacerbated by job losses and low wages. And we pronounce that word penury. And we see extreme poverty there. On our word cloud storage memory system, we're using 2 hands folded together as if begging, as a picture to word association. And you could also make the association of the knee storage bin as if you're on your knees begging because you're in a state of extreme poverty. So that is another way to actually increase your memory of that word. And then we have quiescent, quiescent, and that word is tranquil. We see someone in meditation, in a very tranquil or quiet state. Let's actually see that picture to word association and strengthen it even more with a sample sentence. The United Nations Assembly grew quiescent when committee members learned that the United States was bowing out of a 20-year treaty to help address climate change. Address, adjective meaning quiet, quiet, quiescent. So we actually make the association to tranquil, meditation, quiescence. And then we have strut. We see a knee brace there. Brace is the synonym, structural support. Let's see how it's actually used in a sentence. Peter loves to build model planes from scratch, and he pays meticulous attention to the wood he selects for the struts. And normally the struts are used to connect with for biplanes, the top and lower wing structure. So in many cases, they have the wood has to be very, very strong as far as making model planes for structural support. So that rounds out the 12 words that we're working on. Let's do a little quick memory test. We like to do this thing where we can cover the right section, which is a synonym, the picture word association. See if we can remember. Abdigate. Here we go. Abdigate. Remember the King Cobra hood. King Cobra, which give up the throne. Acid. Acid. Thumbs up. There you go. Gives consent. Aggrandize, aggrandize, so that to make greater. See the greater sign. That is a picture to word association. Assuage, assuage. Let's see. Pacify. We had a pacifier to relieve. Confound. That was frustrate. Fella in a frustrated state. Fallacious, fallacious. We did do the fallacious that had to do with the crystal ball, fortunate, and Maverick, rebel, picture of James Dean, Honoris, Honoris. We did see that had to do with the burdensome. So burdensome had to do with the log on top of the man's shoulders. Paucity, poor. So that had to do with picture word association of hands held out. It is assigned to the hands. Oh, sorry. Paucity had to do. I'm jumping ahead. Paucity had to do with scarcity, so that had to do with the marbles. And the way that I knew that I was going in the wrong direction, because I had already coded paucity to the hand storage bin, and because I did that, I remember the marbles in the hand, so that allowed me to quickly correct myself. Hand paucity storage bin, and that had to do with the marble scarcity. So we have knee, penury, on your knee, so that triggers the memory of on your knee with your hands out, hands folded with it, and that had to do with extreme poverty. Quiescence, we did know that sounds like quiet. Tranquil, meditation. Strut, foot, knee brace, and that had to do with structural support. So just by doing that really quickly, actually was able to reinforce. If I go back to the ones that were a little bit more difficult, just to recall, sewage had to do with pacifier, and fallacious had to do with fortunate. Sewage, pacifier, fallacious, the fortune teller. And those are the two that should reinforce, now that we know that Maverick, Honoris was a burdensome, paucity, hand, marble, penury, knee brace. We can use the storage bins to actually trigger the recall of, if not the synonym, but at least a picture. And once you remember the picture, then you'll remember the synonym that was next to the picture, and then the word definition will come to you. So that is a really, really good way for you to try and remember exactly what's happening with that word. And you can do the same by using your left hand and actually covering the actual word that you're looking at, and only using the synonyms or the picture as an association. So we have the hood, relinquish, abdicate, and then we have accede, which is agree, exaggerate, which is aggrandize, grand, that's one way to remember. Exaggerate, pacify, we just did that. Assuage, frustrate was confound, fortunate. We refreshed that. Fallacious, rebel, maverick, burdensome was Honoris. Red group, that was a trigger. Scarcity had to do with the hand, so that was paucity. Marbles, poor had to do with penury, because the hands are folded. Tranquil, quiescence, and then the last one rounds out with strut, because we see the knee brace strut. So there you go, and you can actually go back and forth between left and right using your left hand or using your right hand, and that actually helps you to reinforce the memory of the color that the word is actually in, the color of the cloud. Also, when you're studying, you should also use the storage bins assigned to the human body to actually pinpoint a storage reference in your own mind. There we see that we did that with the hand, paucity, and the marbles. You'll never forget that the hand can only hold a certain number of marbles. When you think of hair, you'll always think of Abdigate, because you'll think of the king cobra as a hood of your hair. So these are all associations that you can actually make. Aggrandize, grand, exaggerate with the greater symbol. Quiescence, tranquil, quiet. So there are a lot of different ways of associating the 1 to 12 storage bins assigned on the human body in our word cloud storage system to the actual word, and it will actually just help you to make a map where you'll follow the string from the storage bin through the cloud to the synonym to the picture word association and directly to the word definition, and your brain will just use different associations for you to go right back to that word It's also really good to try and memorize and associate the color of the cloud to the word, because that will help you to remember the position of the word with respect to the four storage groups, whether it be the HEM group or the SSE group, the AWH group, or the KAF group. And as you remember more words, you'll always remember that these four storage groups that are assigned to the different, where three storage bins are assigned to a storage group. And these are all little memory tricks that you can use to quickly remember words. And as always, let us go back to our vocabulary cheat sheet with our keywords from the sample sentence. So if you go back to the sample sentences that we used today, let's see. For preparation for these as a vocabulary recall cheat sheet, you could use for Honoris, you could use police and explanation, for paucity, prices, and toys. So if you were to prepare your own memory vocabulary recall cheat sheet, then you'll actually be able to quickly fill them in, and then when you're studying, you're going to remember that bold word and then its two keywords. The memory of the sample sentence is going to come back. Sample sentence is actually going to trigger possibly picture to word association, and then you're going to start mapping that word on the word cloud storage system, whether it be going back to the definition first on the right, or mapping it back to its synonym, then it's from its synonym actually to the color of the cloud that it was positioned on the sheet, to the word, and then even back to the storage bin. You'll associate the color of the clouds to the group. So the blue group is the HEM group, the orange group is the SSE group, the AWH group is a red group, and the KAF group is a gray group. And once you start formulating that in your mind, then you'll be able to map the definition. But we have found that a very strong recall is coming from the vocabulary recall sheets, using them as using two keywords from the sample sentence, because your brain is going to always recall the story of how the word is used. And that's very, very important to remember. Let's look at the word reactant, ammonia, and bleach. We go back, we can recall that the sample sentence had to do with chloramine, which is a very toxic gas. There was a warning on the internet not to, for those who clean their bathrooms with using their own pure forms of different chemicals, never to mix ammonia and bleach, because toxic fumes can be very, very deadly from chloramine. Let's see, semantic dysfunction and diet, that had to do with bodily. That was a bodily. And then we can quickly go back to the word censure, which is three officers, harassment. That triggers recall of the sample sentence that had to do with three police officers being censured, basically restricted of their duties as a result of sexual harassment charges. Now, the word impecunious might be a little bit difficult to remember, but if you remember the keywords attached to the word, then it's quite simple. Musicians and poverty, and the sample sentence had to do with musicians who eventually become wealthy, eventually spend a lot of time reflecting on the poverty of their childhood. Many wealthy musicians can convey stories of living in very, very deplorable situations. So you'll know that the word impecunious has to do a lot with the nature of poverty. Let's see, another one would be proscribed, Texas woman, and that sample sentence had to do with women's rights and the rights of a woman being proscribed, restricted as far as access to abortion. So that was the cue and the story of the word in that particular sentence. So just by going over some of the words from Volume 2, Chapter 8, we're actually recalling the lesson very, very quickly, because we're able to see, we're actually able to quickly see the word, how it was used in a sentence, and most likely you're going to remember the keywords below the bold word. So this kind of setup is always a very, very good way for you to recall. And then if you go back to the lesson itself, then the picture word will actually come back to you. If you recall from dictum, we had a picture of a Greek philosopher. Let's see, from we had a picture of a diamond for intrinsic, and reactant we had, yeah, for the word reactant on our word cloud storage. It's actually coming back now. We had a chemical flask. So a lot of the word picture word associations will come back to you once you remember and recall. And this lesson was actually a few days ago, so you can actually go back and recall how the word is used, and always continue to brush up on your vocabulary recall cheat sheets, really firmly implanting the keywords with the bold word, so that a lot of times you may see this word come across when you're reading, and your memory might flash back to actually seeing this word bolded with two keywords. And then once you're able to remember the two keywords, or you make the association of the keywords to the main word, then the memory should come back pretty quickly. So that covers the 12 words that we're covering. We did quite a few sample sentences to help you with your reading comprehension. And of course, we took a look at our word cloud storage memory system more in depth, with more associations to the storage bin, so you can actually map from left to right directly. And it's very interesting that you can actually connect a hand storage bin to marbles, and you most likely will never forget the word paucity or scarcity, or as we mentioned, Abdigate to the hood of a king cobra, because it's very similar, as you can see, to the hairline on top of your head, which looks like the hood of a king cobra. So we hope these memory tricks actually help you to recall your words as we go deeper and deeper into the list of 500, 600, and beyond words most common that may appear on a TOEFL and SAT. We provide you with real powerful memory recall tricks to help you increase your memory of these words. And it's good to actually, when you're actually reading, to be able to remember these vocabulary recall sheets. A lot of times you'll come across these words or their synonyms, and you'll be able to map back and forth between a synonym and the actual word. So we hope that this is helping you. Please keep in mind also, we provided this cheat sheet from the very beginning, Volume 1, Chapter 1 through Volume 1, Chapter 6, even though we're in Volume 3 now. It doesn't hurt to actually go back and fill this in, so that you'll always have these words at your disposal and you'll always remember them. And we did fill in for some of them for Volume 1, Chapter 7 through Volume 2, Chapter 2, but it's always good to actually go back, as we did here, and look at Volume 2, Chapter 8 and go over them. In our next chapter, we're going to go over Volume 2, Chapter 9 with you, with some keywords so that you'll remember those, and this sheet will be filled in. And we'll just continue to do that and discuss how the sample sentences actually help you to increase your memory and recall the story behind the word. Stories are always mapped very, very uniquely in your brain, as far as being able to trigger the memory of words and their synonyms. And by remembering the story or making a picture to word association, which is what we actually do here with the cloud memory system, then that's going to increase your chances of recalling these words on a fly. Whether you see the synonym first or you see the word first in a reading passage or in a listening exercise, then that's going to significantly increase your ability to score well, whether it be preparing presentations in corporate America or standardized exams. Being able to stretch your vocabulary is going to be very, very important. Well, we hope that this serves you really well. Please hit the notification bell for our next chapter for Volume 3, and we're chugging along, learning more words as we go along. We hope this is serving you well. Please share this video, especially those who appreciate tuning and fine-tuning and perfecting their English grammar with different recall exercises. We hope that you have a great day. Thank you.